Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in episode 149 of In the Bag. I'm your host, Robbie, and today we have a special guest host, the Prez himself, Mr. Hunter Thomas. How you doing today, sir?
How's it going? I'm stoked to be here. Am I the most frequent In the Bag guest at this point? I gotta be close.
So I think at this point we have to exclude Jason out of it because for a short term, Jason basically was a full-time In the Bag staff member. Because when I was out for Leo, Jason was our fill-in. So I think
makes sense.
If we include Jason in the like trio of In the Bag hosts, for sure you are.
Yes. Okay. I know I beat Trevor out, and I don't know who else would even be close. So okay. Stoked to be here.
Yeah, you would think with, I would say Connor is probably our least appearing person out of all of them because we've had Silas on several times. So,
oh yeah, because Silas was just on like last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
I saw. Yeah.
So
wow.
We're having a good time with it. But since you've been on, a little bit of a format change. So I know we did one episode where we talked about sort of your bag with you, and then we've done several sort of theory episodes, famously a mold minimalization episode, which is actually where we're going to start. So when we pivoted this, we talked about a format in Disc Golf Answer Man. And I know that you, like me, have been around disc golf for a while. And were you a Disc Golf Answer Man listener back in the day?
Of course. Yeah. Disc Golf Answer Man actually is what introduced me to lo-fi music because I didn't know it existed until the Disc Golf Answer Man Spotify playlist. That I don't know if that's still, it was called like DeGam Jams or something like that. I don't know if you remember that. There's some disc golf lore. But yeah, no, I was a big disc golf. There was nothing to listen to back then. You had Disc Golf Answer Man, you had Smashbox, and then you had, Disc Golf Nerd and Disc Golf Weekly doing disc reviews, and that was it. That was your disc golf content. And then In the Bags, Trevor and I were actually just talking about this, funny enough, being on In the Bag. We were just saying how like modern day In the Bags don't get as much pop, like not as many people watch them. And then as we were talking about it, I was like, wonder why that is. And then both of us realized immediately, like that was the only disc golf content. Like there was like, if you were looking, we were dying to watch disc golf content, and it was like, well, I could watch Yeti's In the Bag for the 15th time and watch him pull out that train whistle and foot-long sub from his bag, and listen to Patrick Brown talking about why I got to have a fire chicken in the bag, and that was all you had. So that's why In the Bags used to be so big. But nowadays, there's so much content out there.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was Calvin had a bag where he at one point pulls out a slingshot and just like a ton of bouncy balls or something like that. He was like, I have these. But no, you're right. Like that was it. That's all we had. Or there was like, it was tournament coverage was the only other stuff you had. And if you watch tournament coverage at that point, you just kind of found your favorites. Or I love the moments where you would be like, oh, I want to watch, this is like, I've never seen this tournament before. And then you get like 3 or 4 holes in and you realize, wait, yeah, I have. I definitely know what's going to happen here. So
you'd get to like, there was one I watched a ton. It was, I know it was Feldberg and I think Barry Schultz at the Blockhouse in Virginia. 2 days in May was a tournament, but it was Marty McFly was like I watched all of his stuff. And then he eventually started filming for Prodigy. That was like pre-Jomez days, or Jomez existed, but they were doing like the big stuff. And then Marty McFly Jomez was very small at that point. So it was, fun stuff.
Come on. Well, we have some fantastic questions submitted by listeners all throughout. So what we'll do is we're going to run through. I'll ask a question and then just kind of, if you want to tackle it, feel free to tackle it. So our first person, nameless, but I thought inside of the mold minimalization world, how much mold minimalization is too much? I'm a low MA1, high MA2 player. I've minimalized my workhorse drivers, fairways, and putters. I bag 3 Wraiths, 2 Firebirds, 2 Thunderbirds. For putters, I have 3 Envies and 2 Zones. Had 2 Craves, but I got rid of a lightweight one. I feel like I'm losing the discs in my bag and rediscovering them constantly. There's some overlap, but the discs all have their own niche and use. So going back again, how much mold minimalization is too much? I know you've talked about before, if you were like to get back into the competitive world, you would jump into like hardcore mold minimalization. You want to talk about that and see like where you think you would put yourself on the spectrum of mold minimalization of like too much or too little?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like what he's doing might be one step too far, I would say, because where I always fall on mold minimalization is, again, right now I exist kind of to sell and promote plastic. So mold minimalization is anti what needs to happen in my bag, but it still happens, right? Like right now, I think I have like 3 destroyers. I typically have 2 or 3 Thunderbirds. I used to have 2 or 3 MD3s, but where I always fell was I would find a like neutral or slightly overstable disc. And that's what I cycled. So for me back in the day, it was KC Pro Rocks, Thunderbird, Destroyer, and those were like my staples. But I always complemented them on both sides with utility. So I've always bagged a Firebird. And a lot of times I would bag like back in the day when I was doing mold minimalization, it would be like a Roadrunner or something like that, where you have the extreme flippy and extreme overstable, because those are the ones that are hard to find a lot of times. So in every slot that I use it, because like mid range is a lot of times like I don't actually need a crazy overstable mid range, because I typically have like a zone, which is a really overstable putter, and then I have a Firebird, and I don't find I need that middle slot that often. Right now I do, because my zone's really beat in, and so I have a recluse in that slot. But typically I only have one of the like really utility overstable slower disc, one utility overstable faster disc, and that's that. But I think the utility has to be in there to complement, because if not, then what happens is you're just always searching for a really overstable, for him, a really overstable Wraith, or for me, a really overstable Destroyer. And you end up beating up a Wraith for years to get it to be really flippy, and then you lose it. And so I like to complement with the like really flippy, really overstable, where they're like, I'm not reaching for them every hole. I reach for them maybe once a round or when I'm scrambling. And so I don't need that confidence that mold minimalization gives me. But the middle ones, where it's easy to have a slightly overstable Destroyer, a neutral Destroyer, a slightly flippy Destroyer, and none of those are like, if I lose it, it's over, because it's always one step off. So it's like, well, my slightly flippy Destroyer, that neutral Destroyer is always a few rounds away from being at that slightly flippy. So that's where the cycling comes in. But I like to always keep the utility ones on both ends. So I think that's where you might go too far, because I also don't know what he means by losing. Like, is he actually losing the discs, or like the way he worded it, I couldn't tell if he was actually losing the disc in the sense of like, holy crap, where did that disc go, or if it was like he doesn't quite know how they fly, because he's saying rediscovering them constantly. So like, if you're losing them, you're not rediscovering them unless like your local store found them for you or something. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that could definitely be, if you go too deep in mold minimalization, I think losing them in that vibe of like, I have a great example personally. So I found the Buzz this year. I knew where it was the whole time, but I decided for the memes to try it out. And then turns out it's like actually a sneaky good mid-range. Who knew? Apparently the world except for me. Yeah. But I started throwing it, and then I was like, wait a minute. The Buzz comes in every plastic known to man that Discraft has ever thought about making. So I just started putting so many Buzzes in my bag. And then I would have a round where I threw a Z Buzz like the whole round. And then the next round I would throw an ESP Buzz. And I would realize, like, wait a minute, there were several shots that I threw that Z Buzz that the ESP might have been a touch better. And so because there's too many, especially when you do mold minimalization too fast in your bag, I think that's where you would lose it. Like Hunter talks about, like, seasoning in discs is really important. That's where I try to land, is I try to find like a mold and I put one in the bag and let it ride for a little while in the hopes that eventually it's going to push to being a second disc, second one in the bag. And it's worked really well for me. Like Hunter said, if your world is selling plastic and moving plastic and seeing new stuff, it works really well. That's a problem we run into all the time with custom stamps for me, is because it's like, all right, cool. I bag like 10 molds. Which one do we want to do this time? No, so it's always yeah. But at the same time, I will say, like, to go to the other extreme of like too much, too little. I think that there is a joy to finding something coming off the shelf. The only hard part about that is that the consistency of disc releases is, if you just find that one, you don't know if you ended up with, like, I have a trail in my bag right now that like legitimately has stability to it. And I I'm nervous every time I throw it because I'm like, well, if it's gone, I'm actually in trouble on what to do with that disc. So I'm thinking literally of Hunter and I are both going to be playing the Creators Challenge, and at Des Moines course, I think it's like hole 6, 4. It's either 4, 5, or 6. 5 is the Ace Run hole, so maybe 4. The stump hole that Robert Burridge and Simon Lizotte, that's that course. And I'm like, what do I want to launch and just say goodbye to over this water? Because it's not.
You're already thinking about this way more than me. I haven't even started. I just did my in the bag for Patreon this morning, and in the process of doing so, I was like, guys, I have so many gaps in my bag right now. Like, I haven't thought about building a bag because I'm not doing my break series anymore. So I competitively play for a monthly match once a month. And that's just as long as I have a few discs I like, that's all I need. And so I haven't thought about having my bag built until I was doing my in the bag. And as I was doing it, I was like, where on earth is my slightly flippy fairway driver? I don't have one at all. What's going on right now?
Just flex it.
So I was basically I was just telling Patreon, I was like, guys, by the time this in the bag drops, my bag's going to have changed because I just discovered that my bag sucks right now. So sorry. If you watch it on Patreon, there'll probably be another one in a few weeks because everything's about to shift. But that's where I'm at right now. Stuff goes in and out all the time, and it's fun.
Yeah, I love it. I'm thinking about it solely because of the trauma that I can already feel in my soul of, oh man, I'm definitely going to be throwing backhands on the Disc Golf Network. And Ezra Aderholt's going to be sitting right next to me just being like, you serious, guys? So it's fine. It's fine. So next question comes from Daniel. Recently jumped from about 200 feet max forehand distance to around 250 consistent golf lines, touching 280 on my max. While I'm ecstatic about that, I seem to have lost accuracy and shot shaping from short touch forehands in the process. It's been a huge part of my game and feels like a major loss. Any advice on how to practice getting that touchy game back without losing new distance on the high end? So I'll jump in and throw a thought real fast. But Daniel, when I think about if you've gained the distance and you've lost the touch, are you turning them over would be my most common guess. And that if that's the case, then most of the time what's happening is I would adjust your grip, because when you're starting to push that distance, you may have switched to more of a power grip, which is what a Nate Sexton does, where his fingers are touching the rim versus the flight plate. And I don't think either is technically fantastic. I like to take and live in the crease between the disc, and it just causes on the forehand. I still get significant power increase, but I'm not really too worried about burning the disc over, because when my wrist follows through, I kind of pull the disc over. So I would look at a grip adjustment, and you could even go with the famous foundation split grip as you've increased your power, touching it there. But it's the touch forehand is hard for me to if I'm being 100% honest, to go back to, because it's just been part of my game for so long. Hunter, you have any thoughts here on working on your touch forehand?
Yeah, I would say don't when I think of, I don't have a big forehand by any means, max distance, but I do know that my max distance forehand and my approach forehand are different forms. I do different things. So and maybe it's just a different swing thought, but if I'm doing a max distance forehand, I'm coming up a lot more and ripping through, trying to lead with my elbow. I focus on a lot more of driving versus touchy forehands. All I'm thinking about is my wrist. That's all I care about. It's for me, it's a snap wrist motion. Cause I talk about this and I don't really know how much I actually do it, cause it's more of a joke whenever I say it, but I like to think of a fast wrist with a slow arm when I'm doing more approach shots. And I think it's more of a swing thought than actually what's going on. But what it tells me to do is engage my wrist a lot more, because I've noticed on touchy forehands, if I just try to slow my forehand form down, then what ends up happening is the disc doesn't spin. And when the disc doesn't spin, it just leads to gross stuff. But if I focus on snapping my wrist with my form still being slow, then I've discovered that I can actually get little nose up floaty forehands going, because I get enough spin for the disc to actually want to stay in the air, especially on Hyzer. So all that to say, I would just practice your touch forehand form. And understand that you can have a different touch game form, similar to you can have a different backhand upshot form than your max distance form. A lot of times in upshot with backhand, it goes from power grip to fan grip. So forehand, don't be scared of, maybe you are doing this on the rim like Robbie was talking about. And if that's working for you for max distance, that's your distance grip. And then find your touch grip. And just know I'm throwing a touch shot, so I'm going to go with my pads on the flight plate or maybe split grip type thing, and that's when I'm throwing touch shots. Versus I'm going to use a more power grip when I'm throwing distance shots, because we do it on backhand, so don't be scared to do it on forehand too.
Yeah, that's really good. I was just thinking about the fact that you talk about like fast wrist, slow arm.
I don't know if I actually do that. I'm not going to make any claims. That's just my swing thought.
Yeah, no, I love it because I think about. That's probably one of my specialty shots is like a 250 foot just forehand pig, just like zip it somewhere. And there is a Patreon member who comes and plays with me regularly. And he was like, Robbie, you have this like, I don't care, like disrespecting slap that you do. Like he's like, you just kind of walk up, like you just nonchalantly just slap someone. And that's your forehand. And I don't know how you do. And I was like, oh. So I like that's when you were talking about. I was just standing back and going, "Yeah, I guess that's it." It's just very much like the wrist really does drive so much of it, whereas the forehand, the max distance drive, it feels like I'm like punching my hand through someone's face.
Yeah,
the upshot's more of a disrespect, like a slap. So take that with what you will, guys.
There you go. Disrespect the basket for your approach shots.
Exactly. So our next one comes from another unnamed person. I like a shallow, overstable putter with a small bead. I'm thinking of giving the pig a shot at putting. Is it weird to use the 4-speed as a putter? Should I use something more understable from Circle 2? Okay. I love the pig. Pig is love, pig is life. There is not a world that you should regularly putt with a pig. That's the end of the question. It's just not a glidey putter. I know the hand feel can feel better. I do know someone that putts with rhinos and does it pretty well. I think the rhino is less stable than a pig, a little glidier than a pig. So if you still want that hand feel, a rhino might be a better choice. There are definitely other options. I think you could go with like a classic slammer. That's one of the things Trevor loves about his classic slammer is that it isn't the most overstable thing out there. But I definitely think something less. I'm much less of a Circle 2 merchant. I'm fine from Circle 2, but I definitely don't pride myself in being a Circle 2 putter. But Hunter, you've tried a billion different putters, I feel like, this year alone.
That I have.
How do you feel about the likes a shallow, overstable putter with a small bead?
Yeah, I think
that wouldn't be a pig at all either.
Yeah, the pig is a little deeper, I would think. But anyways, and it has a decent sized bead, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Pig is beadless, but it's so deep that the rhino has it. Yeah, the rhino has a huge.
The
bead.
Rhino has
it's
a bead.
Like a wall.
Okay, the Ringer is what I'm thinking. The Ringer GT, I think, has a bead on it.
Yeah. Yep,
if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, look, inside the circle, you're probably not going to get yourself in too much trouble, whatever you go with, because inside 30 feet, most discs fly the same. The problem is with a pig or a zone, or I used to play with a guy who putted with an A2 from Prodigy, anything like that, from 20 feet and in, all discs are just going to kind of plop. 20 to 30 feet, you're going to start to notice that overstable characteristic. So you're probably still not going to get yourself into too much trouble, but outside the circle, you don't want to do it. And more so, you might feel like I have a better chance at making it, but you got to think about the angle when you miss of how a disc is going to hit the ground. And when you're throwing a pig or an A2 or something like that, it's gonna end up coming in on hyzer a lot more often, and especially on uneven greens, there's gonna be a much bigger rollaway potential. Not to mention, understable from C2 just greatly increases the glide. Whether or not glide is actually what's going on, I think it's more just the disc's flight doesn't knife down, so it holds straighter, so you can actually just put it on the line you intend and let it glide there. So what I would go is, if you like shallow putter with a small bead, I don't think you want overstable from C2. personally, because I think that's going to get you into more trouble than it's worth. Honestly, if you're listening to this podcast, you're not the Gannon Burrs and, Ezra Aderhold, he's discussing from Circle 2s of the world. At least you're not listening for advice. You might be listening for entertainment. So I say all that to say you're not reining in Circle 2 putts like all the time. So we need to worry less about making it and more about what happens when I miss. So what you want here is understable to be able to go straight and have it plop down, because we're going to be missing from 50 feet. That's what we do. Like if we were making every putt from 50 feet, we'd be on the Pro Tour. We're not. So I don't think you want the overstable. If you like shallow with a small bead, maybe try something like Invader from Innova. The Colt is what Silas putted with for a little bit from Innova. I'm trying to think what else has a small bead that's
Emac
honestly.
Judge?
Emac Judge could be a great option because that's glidey. The PA3 can feel shallow because it's concave if you find the right run. So I would just try your classic. Some of your classic putters from Circle 2. If you want to putt with a pig or a rhino or something like that in Circle 1, have at it, whatever you're making the most putts with. But from Circle 2, you got to be thinking a lot more about what happens when I miss than what am I making the most with.
Yeah. I remember when I tried to be a cool kid and do the internet picking my mold for a year and found out that I'm weak and I couldn't do it. But I remember that Trevor and I talked before, and welcome to in the bag exclusive behind the scenes. The pig was the one putter that we wouldn't put on the list because he was like, that they're going to make you putt with it. And I was like, yeah, it's going to ruin my putting form if I have to putt with a pig for a year because of exactly what you're saying. Circle 2, I was going to have to be yeeting that thing so hard and like getting this like
and having to put it on
pop.
like Annie and have it. Yeah. You'd expect every putter to flex back all of a sudden and like you don't want that. You might think you want it. You don't want that.
Yeah. No. I mean, if you go with a wizard, certain wizards have enough stability that you can kind of do that on their own anyways. Yeah,
for sure.
Next question comes from Ephraim Boyd. That sounds right. Yeah. Ephraim. At least that's how I would read that. So. Is there a mold or type of disc that you would recommend that they could get at the beginning of their journey and use it still when they start to get competitive? So mold or type, I'm gonna expand this question a little bit because I think an easy answer would be something like a mid or a putter. And I'm going to say picking something that's it has to be fat. It has to be at least a 6-speed.
Okay.
To answer this question. So fire away.
Well, I mean, really any disc out there.
Yeah.
Like because as you get competitive, that means you're getting better, which means you're going to have more angle control. And like a diamond, Trevor had a diamond in his bag like last year, right? That you have a use for pretty much any disc out there. Now, is there a disc that's going to fly straight for you when you first start? That's still going to fly straight for you when you're throwing 400 feet? No, because if it's flying straight for you at 200, it's understable at 400. But you can have a use for it. I mean, for instance, until I lost it, had a Heat in my bag like last week. And a Heat is a disc that I recommend to beginners all the time. It's just for the beginner, it's going to be a straight to slightly overstable disc. For me, it's a Hyzer flip to turn disc. So I'm assuming that this is coming from like, I'm looking to get into disc golf and want to make sure whatever I buy, I can use for a long time. I wouldn't be worried about that because whatever feels good for you now, your hands aren't going to change. Unless you're like a kid right now and you're growing. But if you're getting into it, like most of us when we're adults, your hands are going to be the same. So what feels good in your hand is still going to feel good in your hand years from now. Only difference is you're going to have to release it on more and more Hyzer to get use out of the disc. But that's something that is just going to come with time anyway. So definitely go with something understable because even a Leopard, a Heat, Trevor has an Underworld in his bag. I just put a Treason in my bag, which is a new disc from Dynamic that's coming out this summer, but it's basically like a Gorgon, more or less. So just all very understable stuff that a beginner could get use out of, but now we just throw it on more Hyzer, and that's how I prefer to play the game anyways. So I wouldn't be scared of any disc thinking of like, can I still use it? Because Robbie, you have some flippy stuff in your bag too, right?
Oh, for sure. And I even like looking at a player who's significantly better than me, Sullivan Tipton, top 20 on tour right now, I think, in terms of like
gotta be up there,
point standings and everything, has a soul in his bag.
There you go.
which is
That's a great
like
beginner disc.
-3-1 mid range, and he has it. And there are times where I've caddied for him at multiple events now, and he'll throw it, and it's not like, oh, I have this soul in my bag, and it's just like a meme shot. Like he'll throw some like turnover with it, and I'm like, oh snap, dude, what was that? And he's like, I was a soul. Bro, you threw a soul in New London. Like, what are we doing right now? But loves it. Yeah, for me, an easy answer is the Ozone by Trash Panda, talking exactly what Hunter's talking about when I've done bag swaps with friends who are out there, and they will throw my Ozone, and for them it is a straight fairway driver that goes pretty far, and for me it is I need to throw something soft and get easy stand up out of it, or it can turn into a roller type deal. Ozone is phenomenal in that. So I love that. In fact, I would say one disc that I'm missing out of my bag right now is like a beginner friendly distance driver, just because like once I get past my Ozone, I don't really have anything super flippy in the driver category right now. I'm just usually just grabbing a forehand at that point. So, but I've noticed it. I like literally it was this week I noticed, oh, yeah, maybe I need to go find one of my like beat in Raiders to try to put in that slot. So, all right. Bill gives us some context here. I'm scrolling down a little bit. Here we go. Bill said, I started changing my form since getting back into disc golf last year after a long hiatus. I have a lot better technique now. I'm throwing consistently 350 to 375. Congratulations, Bill. You throw far. Sometimes getting around 400 feet. Bill, you definitely throw far, especially compared to most people. I notice as I'm playing through a round that my form starts to collapse. My back foot doesn't stay behind my body, starting to round. I start to get frustrated with myself the more tired I get. The more I get frustrated, the more I throw bad shots and start to spiral. What is a good way of centering myself mentally, or how do I stay more consistent on the course? I have a net and basket at home that I play around with constantly, but when I get to the course, something clicks or doesn't, and eventually I spiral. Both mental and form questions, I guess. Thanks for all you guys do. Love watching the show. So I've got thoughts on this because especially like coaching and working with a lot of people who are in tournaments, I see this happen a ton in MA3, MA4. But I, like with Leo, haven't found myself in a lot of competitive environments recently. So Hunter, would love to ask, because your most competitive environments right now are filmed on a regular basis, and we know that monthly matches can sometimes feel like a blowout one way or the other. So if you're in the middle of a monthly match and it's getting competitive, like how do you sort of handle this moment without spiraling?
Yeah.
If things are going south.
Well, I think there's kind of two ways to look at this, because I guess he even said like mental and form. So let me go on the form side first, because what it sounds like, he starts his round and everything's good, and then as he gets later in his round, stuff starts to collapse. So what it seems like to me actually is my golf swing right now, where what's happening is I'm going to the range, I'm fixing something, right? And it's working, it's clicking for me. Then I get to the course, the first few holes it's clicking. I get into the round, I get both mentally and physically a little bit tired, and my body resorts back to muscle memory, because that's just my natural, what I do. So if that's what's going on, then kind of the two things to do is you have to just keep getting reps in to rewrite your muscle memory to a certain extent, where your default is the right way. And you also might have to increase endurance. I don't know if it's a fatigue thing that's coming in, where maybe it's not you're reverting back, but maybe it's just you don't have the energy to do whatever your form is. So that could be something. But on the mental side, my timing gets thrown off in rounds, right? And there's sometimes where even during break 68, there would be times where I'm really focused, and out of nowhere, I feel like I just lost it all. Like out of nowhere, I grip lock one, and now that's all I can think about. And what I always try to go back to is I read a book I believe it was by Bob Rotella years ago, called Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. And in it, one of the things he always talked about was that whole idea of aim small, miss small, was kind of all throughout the book, and also talking about focusing on your next shot. So those are kind of two of my thoughts. My swing thought for me that gets me back in rhythm is to commit just if I'm messing up, it's because I'm timid almost every time. So I try to pick something small down the fairway, commit, and then I try to, this is much easier said than done, get into the mindset of this is the first shot I've thrown today. So I forget about the fact that I'm throwing for my 5 and I'm still 150 feet out off the fairway. I forget about that. I try to approach every shot of this is a brand new shot. I can only throw the shot in front of me. Again, that's much easier said than done. So on the mental side, I would try to focus on that things. Focus on something really small, commit to your line, and then forget the round that's going on. Forget however many shots you've thrown to get where you are. You just have the shot in front of you and you execute. If you don't execute it, then you step up for the next one. You have a shot in front of you and you execute. You don't think about what's happened before. So, oh, I was getting a phone call. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, anyways, so yeah, those are kind of the two things. So form and mental side, that's kind of tackling both.
Yeah, I love that idea of like commit, because I think that's where I would see the biggest spiral happen is you've thrown a bad shot. So now you're worried about throwing more bad shots. And so you're like, depending on what your bad shot was, you're trying to make not micro adjustments. You're trying to make major adjustments during your throw of like, oh, I grip locked one. Now you're afraid to grip lock it. So you're going to early release, which is going to have less spin on the disc, less power on the disc. So not only are your discs not going to hit their lines because you're missing your release point, but they're going to come out softer. So suddenly your buzz that you can normally hit pretty well is getting more stable and it's flying more like a wasp because you're not committing. So now it's getting into trouble because your straight buzz found the OB on the left side, which makes you spiral even harder. So I love that idea of commit. And then the other thing is we've talked about this a couple times since switching this format, but you just have to remember that if you have a bad hole, like unless you are a top player trying to play in the world, it's like going to a casino. They want you to feel trapped. They want you to feel like you have to fight to get back. And that's what the course is trying to do to you, is the course is trying to make you play in a way, especially if it's a good course, that when you fight to get back, it's going to punish you even more. So if you've had one bad hole, that's going to happen. People have it happen all the time. You just have to like accept that and not try to give more back to the course. And that can be frustrating, but yeah, like start lowering okay, this is the dream line that I could go for, and shorten the shot a little bit, make it a simpler shot and execute that shot to build that confidence back. It's huge. I tell people all the time, the best shot you can do when you're tilted is to throw a pitch out and execute that pitch out perfectly, because boom, I wanted to put it in the middle of the fairway and I did. Check. So, but Bill, everybody tilts. Watch Ezra Aderhold. Love that guy. Excited to be his partner. Watch him, Cascade Challenge, round 3. Dude was mentally out of it. And when he finally just like checked out for a little bit, he couldn't miss from circle 2. But the pressure that he felt and tilting, it happens. So Talmadge asks, do you think there comes a time where you need to look less at form and work on speed to throw longer distances? Goal is 400 feet, so you can have a stock 350-foot Hyzer shot. He gives some context here. And during this, he talks about working with a coach and how they've been working on sort of just firing faster overall. So I wanted to kind of bring this to you, Hunter, because I know I'm in the middle of like trying to push distance journey myself. But I think a lot of times we can get lost in the sauce on form. So when you felt like you were like really making when you pushed past that 400 mark, what do you think really took you there? Because I feel like you've been at the 400 mark for quite some time. Yeah. Do you remember that part of your journey and what got you there?
You know, what's funny is I was just talking to Connor and Brad out front about this because unfortunately for this person, I was saying that I don't really remember because all I remember about what was broken about my form and what I focused on was I had old videos where my left arm would get way up and I'd be reaching under, and then I'd be like coming through and my left arm would stay up. And so Paul had me put my hand in my left pocket and throw with my hand in my left pocket. And what that eventually did was just kept my arm by my side at all times, and it helped me have a tighter rotation. And then that eventually led to, for me, what really activates my hips and what gets me going is to punch. And so that punch is kind of always my swing thought, because Paul used to always do it, and that was always for me. I remember vividly working on that. I don't remember what it was, because like everyone, I remember getting stuck at 300 feet. I remember getting stuck at 350 feet. And then, I remember the first few times I threw 400, but I don't really remember what got me there. But what we were talking about is, I think part of it back then, I had just the Will Schustrick form YouTube video.
Yes.
And I had a field, and that was all I had, right? Like, I didn't have, Paul had like told me like keep my hand in my pocket, stuff like that, but I wasn't filming my form and sending it to him over and over. I probably should have, but that's not what I was doing. So I didn't have someone telling me focus on this, focus on the nitty gritty. I went to a field and I just threw hard. Right. And then once I started being able to throw over 400, now my thought is actually slow down, because I find it's all timing. It's a lot less about speed. It's a lot more about timing. And Paul actually used to teach this in a clinic a long time ago with Sexton, where one of the first things he would do is he would throw like a 450-foot standstill throw in the clinic to basically tell you like, hey, that fast run up, you don't need it. It's all about timing. And the run up is to get your hips in position and all of that for the timing to work. So slow down was basically the whole thing. Barry Schultz used to always say, slow is smooth, smooth is fast, fast is far. And so basically you slow down and smooth it out there. But it's all about timing is what all of that kind of alludes to. But what I was talking to Connor and Brad about is that sometimes I think what ends up happening is we get so focused on throwing farther that we destroy our entire form for the sake of throwing farther, and it makes us play a lot worse. So we have to figure out, I'll get another phone call. Let me decline this thing. It just throws my whole headphones off.
You guys don't realize that
okay, can you hear me still, Robbie? Am I still here?
The President Foundation. Yeah, you're still here. The President Foundation, guys. Business happens all the time. We're just letting you know this. We got him here. We got him with us.
I can't hear anything right now, but I think you said I'm good, so I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, what I was saying is you have to think through, what am I willing to sacrifice for distance? Because if you're willing to make the exchange of short term, I'm going to play worse so that I can throw farther, that might be a good exchange for you. But just don't expect for you to be working on throwing farther and still be hitting your lines, because that's not going to work. So for Connor, he was trying to focus on getting his nose down, but he didn't have enough time to like go out to a field and focus on getting his nose down and so on and so forth. So he was working on it while he was playing rounds, and it just led to a very frustrating disc golf experience. And I was like, well, Connor, if we're focused on getting our nose down and the only goal of that is distance, we can make the adjustments we need for a nose up throw with disc choices, hit fairways, and score better as long as our nose angle is consistent. Because what ends up happening when you're going for distance, you're going for whatever, is you get inconsistent. In golf, you have a two-way miss. In disc golf, you have nose up, nose down, you have early, late releases. And when you're not consistently bad, it's still consistent. So if you have a consistently bad nose angle, you can adjust for that and make it work for you on the disc golf course. People do it all the time. But it's once you start to fix it that sometimes it's nose up, sometimes it's nose down. That's when everything sucks. So you have to kind of question, like, the distance I'm trying to gain, am I willing to sacrifice my whole game for? If so, keep pursuing it. But then what it is don't go to the course, go to the field, throw, film yourself some, and just kind of grind it out. That's how most people got there. Working with a coach, I think, is great. But if your coach is telling you to speed up and throw faster, you need a different coach, I think.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think about that. Working with Clint has me like, I chuckle because I like will sit there and I'll be doing standstill drills and I'll throw a 60 mile an hour backhand. And then as I hit those 60 mile an hour backhand standstill, I'm like, all right, time to add a run up a little bit. And then I get too lost in trying to go fast on the run up. And it's like, oh, I got that one, 57. Tough. Okay, cool. Yeah, to me, one of the biggest things, as Hunter nailed it, is all about timing. The more you settle into your form, the more you allow yourself to get comfortable with how you throw, the better that timing becomes overall. And so often we can be so fixated on tweaking this, tweaking that, tweaking this, that we lose the naturalness of your form. So there has to be seasons where you make some changes and then you just ride it, because there comes a point where this change isn't going to do anything more for you, but getting more fluid with that change could legitimately be the difference of like 375 to 425, just because it settles into that feeling. Like that's where you can tell when you watch the guys. This is one of my favorite things. Watch a bogey bro battle with the guys and watch how Trevor and Hunter come out of the gate, usually firing just fine. Like their form looks no different than what they were doing any other video. But then you watch the people they're playing with and they get nervous right off the rip. So their form, watch them on hole 1 and watch them on hole 12, especially if they're like doing well. And it very much looks like two different players, unless they're playing against when they played against Joe Revere out in Colorado. Joe doesn't care.
No, he looked the same the whole way through.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I truly think about like, gosh, there was one that y'all played in Virginia on this like big like rolling hill course. Those guys, it was like brothers, I think.
They were brothers.
Yeah,
they were twins or something.
They look
Twins of
just
terror.
Literally watch their form hole 1 and watch their form hole 12. It's fascinating, but it really is that settling into your timing.
Well, I think another thing with the bogey row battles to look at too is there will be a lot of times, because Connor always mentions this, there will be a lot of times where we play players that if you just looked at Trevor and I's form, I'm not saying we have great form, but if you looked at just a video of us throwing and a video of them throwing, you would think we would never lose, right? Because our form looks more like your typical disc golfy form. But again, people learn to work with what they have. And so what'll end up happening is we'll play people that, again, just based on what you think a disc golf form should look like, it would look like Trevor and I would mop the floors with them. But instead, they have maybe a roundy form or a swoopy form or something like that they just are really freaking good with, and they beat the pants off of us. So that's another example of like, sometimes you have to, again, decide what you're willing to sacrifice, because a lot of times you can make what you have work. You just have to grind it out. And so if you're just looking to, hey, I just want to have fun on the disc golf course, play my best golf, and you're already throwing over 350 feet, then you might just be like, I'm going to just make what I have work and get really good at my weird, quirky form. Obviously accepting that I'm not going to throw 450 or 475. It just is, what sacrifices are you willing to make for what?
Yeah. I'm playing some of my worst golf right now because I've tried to push that distance threshold. But I think if I would have just sat in the 350 range and been like, you know what? I'm one of the best putters that I know, and I'm pretty great at upshots, and I've got a great forehand, and I'm just content with my 350 backhand and never adjusted it, I think I would have been fine. But change things. So that's the only other, I'll say this and then we'll move on to the next question for Elvin. But if I'm making adjustments, I had a student who booked lessons, foundationdisc.com, little slight plug there. And he wanted to work on forehand, backhand, and putting all at the same time. And I basically said, hey, you can do what you want. I would advise you, let's pick putting and one of the throwing forms. So that way, when you go to play disc golf and you go to implement this, if you get frustrated with, hey, the backhand's not working, at least one of these still works to score. If we break it all, you'll quit disc golf because it's just going to be frustrating. And now you're going to spend money doing lessons and you're going to be like, what am I doing? And I think that's actually one of the advantages we have in disc golf versus a golf is if I fix your swing in golf, there's only one way to swing a club. It's just what speed of club am I swinging? Tough. So Elvin asks, I struggle with the mental side of putting. I practice putting 3 to 5 times a week and play rounds 2 to 4 to play 2 to 4 rounds weekly. I'm known in our group as the guy who throws the farthest and can't putt. What's the best way to get rid of the fear of missing a birdie putt? This is one. Yeah, I have you here, Hunter, not as I'm calling you out for it, but
Yeah.
I was like, this is a great question for one of the guys.
Oh, I think what worked well for me is you just have to miss enough of them in front of 50,000 people. And then it really just, you start to realize it doesn't matter. Honestly, Trevor and I talk about in bogey row battles, sometimes what gets us into the round, because like bogey row battles is the only time where like we can see the people we play in front of. Like typically we're just looking at Connor and it's like, it's not embarrassing to airball and putt in front of Connor. But when we go down to Raleigh and there's legitimately our last bogey row battle, there was like probably 80 to 100 people came out to watch us play. Psychos. It comes out, I think, like next week, Acorn Hill. It was awesome. But when you're out there, there's a whole different level of pressure because I'm looking at a gallery and all of a sudden I'm like, this is embarrassing if I miss this 20 footer. Right. So Trevor and I've actually talked about it's important to airball one of those early just to set the stage of like what these people are here to watch. Cause then there's nothing else we can do to embarrass ourselves more than that. So maybe try that first hole when you're playing with your buddies, miss a bad one and do it on purpose. So then you're like, well, there's nothing I could do that surprises them now. And putting inside the circle, I stand by this. Inside 20 feet, you know, outside 20 to 30 feet, there is skill and mental. Inside 20, it's all mental. Like 90% mental. To prove that, like months ago, I said that, and then I forget who it was arguing with me that like, no, there's skill to it. I'm like, well, there's definitely a level of skill. But I was like, if we got someone random off the street, brought him in here, put him at 15 feet, hand him 3 discs, they're gonna make them. And they're like, no. And so we did. We walked over to Firehouse Subs. We got the manager of Firehouse Subs. He'd never played disc golf in his life. We brought him in here on a live stream and we gave him 3 putters. We sat him at 15 feet. We just said, chuck it in that target there. And he did the like frisbee toss like your dad would do with them. Banged all 3. Dead center. Because we're playing on a giant basket with a small frisbee. Like putting is easy. We make putting hard. So once you realize that, then you can also accept the fact of like, well, I'm the problem. I'm also the solution. So when it's all mental, then you know really easily, I just have to get out of the state of caring so much, right? About if I miss this 15 footer or not, because you're going to miss them here and there. We're all AMs. That's what we do. So just accept that. And then when you miss one, laugh it off. Don't, because like when it gets bad is when it starts to spiral, you know, like in break 68 is probably the closest thing for me of like every stroke mattered so much. That's probably the closest thing where when I missed a 15 footer, I felt that sting like I used to. But in my day-to-day disc golf life, I don't feel it just because like it's one stroke. Right. And if you're the best thrower of the group, you're going to make that stroke up somewhere else. Just don't let it spiral into 2, 3, 4, 5 strokes. If it's one stroke and it's just like, oh, wow, that one stuck on my finger or whatever, and you walk up and you just throw the next one in and forget about it, then you're still going to beat them if you're throwing better than them. But it's when it spirals into you can't make a 15 footer to save your life. That's when you're going to lose every time.
Yeah. I put out a video, Elvin, on my channel 2 weeks ago. It's whenever Trevor started working on my videos. So it feels about 2 weeks ago because it was the first one he worked on. And I think the video is titled like my best putting advice that no one will ever do. And it literally in the video, the TLDR is if you're outside of 20 feet, turn the putter upside down and literally toss it under the basket. Like just slide it under the basket. Because I think that what Hunter's saying as well, 3 putting is always more tilting than missing 125 footer. Like just having the opportunity to 3 putt on a single hole can be devastating. You look at Allie Smith on the Pro Tour, who is so afraid of 3 putting that right now tap-ins, literal bullseye putts, she does this like turbo slam putt because she's that afraid of 3 putting. And she is legitimately, as a professional, okay with missing tap-ins. And I don't agree with this mentality, but that's where she's at. Is she's okay missing 1 to 2 slam putts around because it makes her not 3 putt. That's how much more 3 putting weighs on her.
There is also something to think about if your putt allows you to 2 or 3 putt from 15 feet, maybe change your putt.
That's
maybe
fair. Yeah.
go to a little bit more lobby putt or something,
Yeah.
because to Robbie's point, the 20 to 30 foot range, most of us aren't making most of them, especially 25 to 30. So if you just go to a softer putt where maybe it's not the extreme of laying it up, maybe you're like, all right, Robbie, you're crazy there. I'm not doing that. Okay, whatever. Maybe if you're in that boat, well, just don't spin putt at 100 miles where you have another 30 footer coming back, right?
Yeah.
Like just do something lobby where if you miss, you're going to have followed Robbie's advice anyways and had to drop it. Because it is true of like, if you have a 30 footer and it leads to another 30 footer that could lead to a 25 footer that could lead to a 20 footer that then leads to a tap in, you just lost your whole round because you kept spinning it past the basket. I've seen that so many times. So if you're terrified of putting, in tournaments, in college disc golf tag matches, when it's like we're fighting for where we're going to be at, and I'd have a guy on my card just, he was playing great, and we get to hole 16, and next thing you know, he took a quadruple bogey because he had a putt for birdie and just played army golf on the green. So yeah, if your pride won't let you lay up, at least hopefully your pride will let you do like a lobby putt or something where you stay closer. But don't go to the Ali Smith route. That's let's not do that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I gave the analogy in baseball of it's okay. Like in baseball, if they take a walk, it doesn't count against their batting average. It's okay to walk up to a putting green sometimes and say, you know what? I don't feel comfortable making this putt. Like, just give it a soft little bit. That's push putting is less favorable for distance and less favorable in the wind. And pretty much every other aspect of putting, it is superior to spin putting. You get less spit outs, you get less comebackers. Like, I give that. So I think for most people, if you struggle with spin putting, push putting is, you've probably thrown a cornhole bag at some point in your life. It's going to be way more similar to that than spinning the disc into the basket. So I want to do one last question, and it's one that I wanted to make sure I had you on for because I actually haven't thrown this yet. Have you gotten to throw the Tide by Mattio?
I have. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So Chris asks, since you mentioned doing a longer segment on Westside discs, are you excited for the Mattio Tide coming out? Feels like it fills a gap in the lineup that's been needed, similar for what the time lapse did for MVP Axiom. Also, does being from Alabama factor into your decision? So I am an Alabama fan. The idea of the Tide seems really great. I've got ideas on what I think could help Westside just as a brand fill the gap and all of that. But I want you to talk about like the Tide itself.
What do you think the Tide does?
So
what gap do you think it's filling? Let's start there.
Yeah, I would think that the Tide is their form of a Wraith.
Okay, yeah. I think you're on there. I think most people, because Westside has probably the worst flight numbers of any brand out there. The Luna should be a Westside putter. If the Luna was a Westside putter, the flight numbers would make perfect sense. But the Tide, I think, claims to be like a 12-something-03 or something like that. Actually, let me pull up the flight numbers. I don't want to do it disservice here. Tide, Westside.
I bet it's got like a 0.5 just because Trilogy loves to sneak in that like 0.5 turn or fade. It probably has the same numbers as a Raider.
Okay, so it has a 12.6 negative 0.53. So you hear that and you think this is a really overstable distance driver.
Yeah.
It's a Zeus. You throw it on Hyzer, it pops up, gets a little cruise, comes back. You throw it flat, it gets a full S flight. We posted a video of it on Instagram, and people were commenting because they had the same expectation of us of like, oh, this is going to be, Mattio's name on. This is going to be Westside's overstable distance driver. Here we go, like XCal level, whatever. And Trevor threw it, and it had like a nice full flight. And everyone was like, surely this is into a headwind, right? No. There might have been a little breeze, but it wasn't a ripping headwind. The disc is just slightly understable, which makes perfect sense if you're a Westside fan because, I think they had one. It might be the Sword. There was something that had the flight numbers of the Destroyer, yet flew almost like a Thrasher. Like that's just what they do for whatever reason. So yeah, I don't know anything about Westside's lineup as to what gap this is supposed to fit, because I just view all of Trilogy as the same. But the Tide is a flip up distance driver. So expect it if you're throwing hard enough, if you're throwing like 300, 320, 350, it's not going to get any flip. If you're throwing closer to 400, expect a Hyzer that pops up, expect a flat shot that gets a full flight, and it's trilogy plastic. So that's brand new. Expect to hit a few trees and then have a Hyzer flip to turn disc.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
the Tide.
I only know this because of the fact that I just shot a video talking about the Raider yesterday, because the Raider is a 13.5 minus 0.53. So that makes me think of like, oh, Trevor like probably instantly was like, oh, this is just a brand new Raider coming out of my hands, or maybe even a little more turn.
The Tide was like a beat-in Raider.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So, is there a world that the Tide, because I know the Zeus sadly had to go. Have you found your replacement for your Zeus yet?
I have. So I actually have a twofold. So my Charger has gotten beat up enough that it flies like my current Zeus, and then the Jessica Weiss Tour Series Shrike flies like a brand new Zeus. Basically, they're the most overstable Shrikes I've thrown since like the first runs. They're crazy. Like I put it in my bag expecting it to be a flippier version of my Charger, but I discovered that it's kind of had their identities flipped. The Charger is like a Hyzer flip to full flight for me, and then the Jessica Weiss Strike is like I pop it on Hyzer and it gets up almost to flat and then Hyzers, or I can throw it Hunter flat, which is a slight Hyzer, and it gets a full flight out of it, which is wild for a Shrike. So yeah, that's my Zeus replacement. I actually think I'm throwing both of those farther than I ever threw my Zeus. So it's worked out great.
Let's go. Yeah. Chris, I one day we'll do just like a Westside thing, and maybe we'll find like the right guest for talking Westside. But I think Westside's biggest thing, and like Hunter nailed it, is their flight numbers are insane. And their distance driver lineup is just so hard to find the right like disc for you, because the King is really good, but like the King feels like a really fast driver that you can't get a hold of. And then pretty much all their other stuff is like super overstable. The World is really fantastic, but the World says it's a 14.4 minus 0.53. Sorry. They love this minus 0.53, and it's like the only thing they're changing is the speed and the glide. And so it just feels like they're releasing the same disc over and over and over again.
What was the like Nico disc? Because the Adder, is that from Westside?
Yep. 13.504.
Okay. That one's actually overstable.
Yep. Yeah. It's overstable.
That one's actually really overstable.
The Giant is 14.403.5. The Giant is also overstable. It's an
World's
older
flippy,
one.
Right?
Yeah, the World is flippy. Just like the Destiny says it's a minus 2.3, and I would say it's much closer to like a minus 3.2.
Yeah.
Which would then cross into the Queen, which is a minus 3.2, and I would say that's like a minus 4.2. The Sorcerer says it is the exact same numbers as the Tide. It's flippier. So it's this problem with Westside of I can't fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And I think that's where people walk into anything from Westside fairways and up, is they're just like, I have no idea what to expect out of this. And there are some banger discs inside of that. The Underworld, like we said, phenomenal. And I would say does fly extremely true to numbers. But if you want like a more pro level Underworld that has a little more, the Seer is phenomenal.
Never thrown it.
Who have you ever heard that throws a Seer before?
Don't know.
No one.
The Bear's pretty solid, right?
Yeah, the Bear is a Stag Pro. If you use like their lineup. So the Stag, another phenomenal disc that I think more people, if you're looking for like, you throw 300 to 325 and you're looking for a good distance fairway, the Stag is fantastic for you. You throw 325, 350, the Bear is a phenomenal disc for you. But no one throws these because like the Hatchet is phenomenal. The Hatchet is, to me, just as good as a Heat. Nobody throws it because I don't know why.
I think also it's like because Dynamic's honestly falling to this now. Before you had Latitude was pushing Latitude, Dynamic was pushing Dynamic. They both owned Westside. Who was pushing Westside? Nobody. Yeah. It's like now Latitude owns Dynamic and Westside. So up until Bobby Cool Daddy Slick Breeze came back, it was like, who's pushing Dynamic? Nobody. So like now Dynamic's identity's kind of gone. They're falling into the same thing where it's just like, if you don't market it, you don't show people, and you have bad flight numbers, it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. So I Westside, I have to give my title still to DGA as the most slept on brand in disc golf. I think that they've got such good molds out there, but Westside is up there with me in the top 5 as great ones.
Legacy belongs on that list.
Yeah. I do.
Especially because they actually make their own discs, unlike DGA's Discraft, Westside's Latitude. Legacy got their own plastic too.
And it's Legacy just is Innova, older Innova molds. Yeah, because they've like sort of acquired some old Innova molds.
I don't know if they've acquired or just redesigned, because Steve Rico left Innova and then started Legacy, but that's the vibe. Is like the Ghost is a rock. The Recluse in my bag, there's nothing really like it out there. I believe the Patriot is a T-Bird. The Outlaw's a like beat up destroyer. Honestly, almost like an Avery destroyer.
The Mongoose was a Sidewinder.
It's flippy. Yeah, it's either Sidewinder or Roadrunner. One of those. Yeah, it's flippy. And their plastic kind of feels like older Innova, like old Innova Champ and older Innova Star. So yeah,
I love it. Well, that's going to do it for questions for today. We've got next week. We'll have Brad will be back, so we'll have Chris. Will be answering your musical question. Luke will be talking about you've been playing MA3. When do you move up? Things like that. And then Zach do putter plastic change interactions with the chains. So look forward to those next week, guys. But before we leave, Hunter, do you want to let us know what's new with the warehouse?
Yeah. So as of right, when does this drop? This drops Friday?
Yep, tomorrow.
At what time?
5 p.m. We drop with
okay.
We drop with
Sweet.
all the other stuff.
So this is all live on the site. So the pre-orders for all of the MVP releases are already live on the site. So I believe that's like the Fission Trail. I think they had a Plasma Dimension, the new Trance, and then an Eclipse. Is an Eclipse Insanity? Some new Eclipse discs. Those are all pre-orders. They're already live on the site. Earlier this week, we also had the release of the Discmania Cloudbreaker, which is now Gannon Burr's Cloudbreaker. I accidentally called it Eagle McMahon's Cloudbreaker on the coffee break, so sorry. But same thing. Then also Climo's new Victory line plastic dropped alongside his also prototype of his new driver. I believe it's the Osprey's the new driver. So the Victory line's like his Champ plastic, his Z plastic line. We should have the return of the Shark, Trevor DX Sharks, just dropped on the site. So that's a custom stamp. DX Shark, Return of the Shark. It's a really cool stamp for $15 because we're got to do it on DX. So a little cheaper there. So if you've always wanted to support Trevor or the brand and you didn't want to pay the normal custom stamp price, then that's a good way to do it. And you can check out the Shark, see what all the hype's about. And the last disc to highlight that just dropped is foundation stamped buzzsaws. So you got
sick.
The buzz saw you can see on the rim there, and then we got the foundation saw blade in the middle. So these are sick. I'm gonna mess around with this one because I'm still looking for an MD3 replacement, and I love the look of the buzz saw. So I grabbed this exact one for my bag. So it's got like the gold star stamp on it, but a bunch of different colors, bunch of different weights, all that fun stuff. That's all live over at foundationdisc.com right now.
Yeah. I love it, guys. As someone who had the buzzsaw in my bag from USDGC on, it's so good. So if you find a disc and you say, man, that's amazing, and it meets exactly what I'm looking for. Who knew that I needed a DX Shark? But I find that DX Shark, and we know that if it's good, we keep it in the bag. So we'll see you guys next week.